Welcome to Intuitive Transformations with your host, Sylvia Henderson, and discover tools, wisdom, and inspiration that will empower you to transform your life. Sylvia is an intuitive life coach and energy healer with a growing practice that is focused on empowering others to be more of who they want to be. For the next hour, join Sylvia and explore and unravel anything in the way of you creating the life that you would love to live on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intuitive Transformations radio show, where you will find tools you can use to change and transform your life right here on the OMTimes Radio Network, the voice of consciousness at OMTimes.com. This is Sylvia Henderson, your host, and I am an intuitive life coach and an energy healer. If you would like to learn more about me and the work that I do, then please feel free to visit my website at intuitivetransformations.net. That's intuitivetransformations with an S.net. So today is Sunday, October 9th, and for those of you who listen to my show live on Sunday evenings, I have exciting news to share with you all, and that is that the Intuitive Transformations radio show is moving to a new day and time starting next month on OMTimes.com. So beginning Thursday, November 10th, you can listen live to the Intuitive Transformations radio show at 2 p.m. Eastern. One of the reasons for this change is that it allows me to interview international guests who live in a time zone that makes it difficult for them to be on the show, because 9 p.m. Eastern is more like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning for them. So I'm excited because it's widening my net in terms of who I can bring on the show and share with you. For those of you who listen to this show via podcast, you won't notice any difference whatsoever. But for those of you who like to listen to the show live, I want you to be sure to mark your calendars and take note that the show will be live starting on November 10th on Thursdays at 2 p.m. And until then, you'll continue to find me right here live every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. Now, I don't know how many of you are feeling how intense the energy has been this last week, but I have to tell you that it has been very intense for me, especially the last few days. And I know that it's a lot of this unraveling of our old, outdated paradigm of judgments and fear-based perceptions. And so if you're feeling the same thing, just know, as I've reminded you in the past, you're just releasing what no longer serves you. So as it comes up, just allow it to flow out of you. If you feel like crying, take the time to cry. It's okay to let the emotions move through you. Emotions are energy plus motion. It's energy that wants to move, emotions. So allow yourself to emote that. I know we live in a society where everyone feels that people shouldn't cry or shouldn't feel their emotions, but allow yourself to take that time, even if you have to go to a quiet space with just you yourself. Do that to take care of you, just so you can decompress and allow that energy to move through you, because it's old stuff coming up to be released. So here's my advice if you're feeling emotionally or energetically overwhelmed. The other thing I would like for you to think about doing is asking your spiritual team of angels and guides, and also your higher self, to step in and help you. No matter what you're going through, you need to know you're not alone. We all have spiritual, non-physical helpers who are lovingly standing with us, even though we can't see them, and they want to support us. But we have to ask for their help in order to receive it. So ask for help and guidance every day, even for the smallest things. Don't wait until you are in a dire straits and that you're desperate and it's a huge, overwhelming challenge. Ask for the little things. Ask for daily direction now, even if you don't think you really need the help, because we are living in a time where logic and reason are no longer accessible. And you can see that just by looking at the U.S. Presidential race that we have here in the United States right now. And if you're not listening live, you're probably listening to the to the debate, and you'll come back and listen to the show later on podcast. But this is a reality that we're seeing played out there. It's not logical. It doesn't make any rhyme or reason. And so this is where we have to learn how to trust our inner guidance so that we can negotiate this new terrain without stepping into fear. The tide is turning and energy is changing quickly, and you see it everywhere. So connecting with Spirit will allow you to make the very best decisions for you and your family and align you with more inner peace so that you can step out of fearful thoughts and worry that does not serve you. So today we are going to talk about a unique way for you to connect with your higher self, and we're going to talk about karma, what karma is, and how it's been impacting your life today and where it comes from. My guest today is going to share from her almost 30 years of experience researching past lives, how you can begin to heal and release the karmic ties from your past, meaning past lives, that are keeping you bound emotionally and physically here in your present life. She's going to talk about soul writing, which is a wonderful process she uses with others that allows you to connect with your higher self, as well as the findings from a wonderful research study that she did and that she's written about in a book called Karma Can Be a Real Pain, Past Life Clues to Current Life Maladies. My guest today is Joanne DiMaggio. Joanne DiMaggio is an inspired writer, lecturer, and teacher who has been actively involved in Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment, and they call it A.R.E for short, since 1987. She earned her master's in Transpersonal Studies degree and her spiritual mentor certification through Atlantic University. Joanne is a graduate of the Eastern Institute of Hypnotherapy and a member of the National Association of Transpersonal Hypnotherapists. She has been professionally pursuing past life research and therapy for nearly 30 years and has been a guest speaker at several A.R.E conferences in Virginia Beach and for A.R.E audiences throughout Virginia, as well as in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Bethesda. She also has spoken at Rhine Institute and for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Joanne's latest book, Karma Can Be a Real Pain, Past Life Clues to Current Life Maladies, was just published in September of this year, so it's brand new. Her other books include Soul Writing, Conversing with Your Higher Self, and its sequel, Your Soul Remembers, Accessing Your Past Lives Through Soul Writing. Joanne lives outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and maintains an office at the Unity Holistic Healing Center, a service of Unity of Charlottesville, where she continues her research. And guess what? Joanne is joining us here today. Joanne DiMaggio, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sylvia. I'm really glad to be here with you.
I am so happy to have you here as well. So, Joanne, as I shared before the break, I'm also a trained hypnotherapist, and everything you wrote about in your book makes absolute perfect sense. I'm sorry, not before the break, before we came on the air. And I'm very excited to talk about your research and your findings that you share in your book and how augmenting a past life regression session with soul writing has really revolutionized the process and provided a stellar outcome from a past life regression. So, Joanne, you've been professionally pursuing past life exploration since 1987, and you're also a longtime student of Edgar Cayce. What was it about past lives, or even hypnotherapy, that pulled you in so strongly that you made the decision that this is what I want to do with my life?
Well, it's really interesting because I did start out that way. But I have to admit that as a child, I was drawn to a particular time period, to the 18th century. And I used to read books about Dolly Madison and Abigail Adams, and I love period piece movies. And for Halloween, I'd always dress up as, with a long dress on and little ringlets in my hair. And as I got older, I would write with a feather pen by candlelight and listen to harpsichord music. I was a very, very strange child. But and then when I became a teenager, I started reading about Edgar Cayce. I read books by Jess Stern and Ruth Montgomery. I read A Search for Bridie Murphy. That was the first reincarnation book that I read, and it made perfect sense to me. Something clicked. It answered all of my questions about, why were some people poor and some people rich? Why were some people sick and some people healthy? Why did some people have wonderful relationships and others had to struggle? So I became fascinated by it, and but I saw myself as a writer. I tell people I'm a reporter for the universe. So what I'm here to do is to observe what goes on around me, write about it, and then disseminate that information. But my fascination for past lives really peaked in 1987 when Shirley MacLaine came out with her groundbreaking book, Out on a Limb. It became a mini-series that year. This just shows my age. I don't know how many of your listeners remember this. But,
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I think it was a big wake-up call for a lot of sleeping metaphysicians, myself included. And, of course, a big portion of that had to do with past lives. And so I had an interest in it yet again. So I became involved with the A.R.E., started reading the Cayce readings, and started my own past life organization outside of Chicago called Plexus. And whenever A.R.E., I was also involved with the Chicago area team for A.R.E., and when they would bring a speaker in who was a past life therapist or who wrote about it, I invited them to come and speak to my group. So after a while, one of them said to me, Henry Bolduc, who has since passed on, and he said, Joanne, you know more about past life work than about 95% of the past life therapists that are out there. Why aren't you doing this work? And I said, Henry, I'm a writer. I don't want to be a therapist. He goes, well, you should reconsider. He kept on me and on me and on me, and finally I acquiesced and I got my training to do this work. And I have to say thank you, Henry, for pushing me in that direction, because now I have a front row seat to what everybody is experiencing.
Wow, don't you love those synchronicities? We'll be back in just a moment with more of Joanne DiMaggio talking about karma and how it can be a real pain. We'll be back in just a moment.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Come on, smile. Oh, honey, he's still not smiling.
Maybe he's not a smiler.
Yeah, maybe he's just not a happy baby.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Or maybe he's teething.
Maybe it's just a phase.
Maybe he has autism, and we can definitely do something to help.
Maybe is all you need to find out more about autism. No big, joyful smiles by 6 months is one early sign. Learn the others at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Sylvia Henderson on the Intuitive Transformations radio show, and with my very special guest, Joanne DiMaggio. And Joanne, before we went to the break, you were sharing about how a fellow A.R.E. member named Henry had suggested that you go into getting trained because you knew so much about past lives. So for those who this information might be brand new, or they've heard about past lives, but they're really not sure what that is or how that works. Would you mind explaining what past lives are and how you work with people?
Well, if you think of yourself as a spiritual being having a human experience, at least that's the way I think of myself. We were all souls created at the same time. We decided we wanted to come into the earth to experience life in the physical plane and all that entailed. And so from the beginning of time, we have been gathering information about different aspects of human life through our own experiences. Our souls remain the same. They continue on even when the body dies. So the body is like an automobile. And like any automobile, you drive it and drive it and drive it and drive it until it can no longer function anymore. Then you trade it in for a new car. That's basically what this is like. Your soul remains the same. So your soul is the sum total of all the experiences you've had from the beginning of time, but you keep changing your body. You change your sex, and you change the situation that you come in to. You choose your parents. You have a pre-life session in which you say, I want to come and I want to work on the issue of abandonment, let's say, that as an example. So you choose your family, you choose your parents to come in and have that experience so that your soul can learn what that is like and move on to the next lesson that you choose to learn until you have completed all of the lessons on this planet that we call Earth, which I think of as a school. And the lessons you're working on are part of your curriculum. And eventually, you're going to pass and not need to come back anymore. But I don't know very many people are at that level. There certainly are some, but most of us have to come back repeatedly.
That's why we have old souls on the planet today.
Yeah, I say old souls are just slow learners. They just keep coming back over and over and over again. Yeah.
I know. I do too. I feel like I'm on the remedial school bus here, sometimes on planet Earth. So, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. That's exactly how I view it as well. So can you talk a little bit about karma? Because one of the other things I really enjoyed in reading your book is your definition of karma really mirrors my definition of karma, which is really kind of different from the Buddhist, Hindu kind of point of view about karma. So can you express your definition of karma and why you decided to focus on physical karma, in your book, in your research?
Mm-hmm. Well, karma is the law of cause and effect. Cayce put it this way: whatsoever a soul soweth, that it shall also reap. So it is the actions that we've taken in a previous lifetime, whether it was something that we did, something that was done to us, whether we encountered a trauma or a wound or an illness, how we responded to that. And somehow it did not get resolved, and we have brought it in with us to work on in this lifetime. So it's a very just system. I was born and raised Catholic, went to 12 years of Catholic school, and I never could understand how you could commit a sin, a so-called mortal sin, even something as serious as killing somebody, and yet just go to confession and that would be the end of it. With karma, that's not the end of it. With karma, if the pendulum goes too far in one direction, it's going to have to come back to center. So somewhere, somehow, down the line, you're going to have to address that issue of whatever it is that you did. Either something then you'll have to experience the same thing that you did to someone else, or there'll be some other ramification of it. And with physical karma, it's a manifestation of karmic law, but it takes place at a visible or physical level within the human body. So the reason I went in this direction is because I saw a shift in my regression practice. There were people that were coming to me with chronic conditions. They had exhausted the traditional medical route, and they thought, well, nothing else has worked. Let me just see if it could be past life related. Is this something I brought in with me? And so simultaneously with that, or I should say synchronistically with that, I attended a conference with Dr. Norm Shealy and Carolyn Mace at A.R.E. on medical intuition. And one of the first things Dr. Shealy said was that he believed that all illness was past life related. Now, for a medical doctor to say that at a conference really blew me away. And I thought, wow, there must be something more to this. And kind of remembering my own experience with it many years ago, and as I said, the people coming in, and then I started doing research into the Cayce readings. He had physical karma readings that covered everything from acne to venereal disease. So I became very fascinated with it, and I thought, well, this is a tremendous tool for healing. Let's see if this, if the average person, the average John Smith and Jane Doe, is coming in with a chronic condition. Let's see if we could, in fact, trace it to a previous life, and if so, can we heal it?
And so this is what spurred your idea of going ahead and creating this research project, which is the basis for your book.
Right. I sent out a call for volunteers through the A.R.E. and also through my Unity Church. And it was a year-long project, and I did 50 sessions with 23 of those are in the book. They ranged in age from 34 to 74, and they came from highly respected professional backgrounds. I've had university professors, I've had registered nurse, I've had people that worked for NASA, I've had defense contractors, flight attendants, and Navy veterans, and marketing people. You can just imagine every conceivable career choice of people that if you look at them and you know what they do for a living, you wouldn't think, oh, they must be prone to imaginings. They're not believable people. These were all totally credible, believable people, and they came in with conditions like arthritis and diabetes and heart disease and liver and kidney problems, weight and digestive issues. Some of them had head-related concerns, like they had consistently having head trauma, concussions. I had one who was speech impaired, another hearing impaired, a lot of people with foot, leg, and back pain, some people with sexual karma even, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental and emotional disorders. So it was interesting as they came in, as Spirit brought them to my door, to listen to their story and to see if we could make the connection with what they were dealing with today with something that happened in the past.
And so how was the past life regression helpful in creating the healing response? Because one of the things I read in your introduction, which I found really resonated strongly with me, was that when a client, when someone uncovers the source of their malady, and you couple that with a greater, stronger connection with Spirit, it leads to healing. Can you talk a little bit about how this healing evolved from the past life regression?
Well, I think that when they told their story, when we went back and uncovered, because the instruction I gave them at the time of the regression was that their soul was going to guide them to the lifetime that was most impacting them now. It was the lifetime in which they acquired the karma that they were working on in this life. So they went to that lifetime and saw exactly what happened to them, or something that they did to somebody else, or it could be that they had an attitude, a bad attitude about, like someone that was made fun of people that were obese. Now she's struggling with obesity in this lifetime. Or they saw the trauma or the wound or the illness or whatever it was that happened in the past. We went through we took a lot of time to do a correlation between the past life and what's going on in their lives now. Most of the people, without exception, said that just seeing it, just knowing it, just understanding it, by uncovering it, it created an acceptance within them, an understanding, and that changed their perspective. And when their perspective changed on it, that's when the healing occurred. Now, some people had spontaneous healings when the condition completely went away after finding out about it. That happened to 4 out of the 23 in my book. Most people had improved substantially after the session. The ones who remained the same, where their condition didn't change, however, they're the ones who mostly said that they did have a change in perspective, a change in their attitude about it, and that based on that, they were led into healing. There was I quoted Garrett Oppenheim, who wrote an article on a karmic case of polio. He was a polio victim, and he said that he came to look on his handicap as a gift, and that enabled him to understand the afflictions of others and enlarge his horizons to become a better person. So therein was the healing. We did some healing work in the course of the regression while they were in an altered state of consciousness to let go of that of the incident that happened, to understand why it reappeared in this life, and to do some forgiveness work, obviously, for themselves and for others around them. And so, and then the soul writing helped a great deal. And then once that door was open, they continued to be able to understand it and heal it as the days and weeks and months went by.
That is so beautiful, because that's how it's different than traditional karma, that you're supposed to burn it off or work it off. And it really is changing that perception, releasing that judgment, and bringing in that energy of forgiveness and understanding it from a different place. That is the powerful thing that dislodges that karma. So that's what I really appreciate, is that karma is not this heavy burden that you have to effort through if you have some great tools like what you offered for these wonderful people that you write about in your book. So I know we're going into another break in just a moment, and when we return, we're going to talk more about Joanne's book, Karma Can Be a Real Pain, and the findings from her research studies. We're also going to talk about soul writing, too, and some of the other components that brought about these fantastic results. We'll be back in just a moment. So stay tuned.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Buffett. How would you like to meet an endangered manatee? You can by joining Save the Manatee Club's Adopt the Manatee program. You can't take them home, but you can get to know your new manatee friend through the photo, biography, and information the club sends to you. And you can read updates on your manatee in the club newsletter. More importantly, your contribution goes to programs that are working to save manatees from extinction. It's easy to help. Call 1-800-432-JOIN.
Well, we're back with Joanne DiMaggio, and we're talking about her book, Karma karma can be a real pain, past life clues to current life maladies. And Joanne, before we went to the break, I wanted to ask you a question I didn't get a chance to share then, and that was how you talk about birthmarks and moles that can be on your physical body in this life, and how they tie into past lives. And I was really struck by that because I have a large birthmark on my back, another one that's a different color on my thigh, and I have moles all over my body. So what does that mean, or what could that mean?
Well, search, when I do a body scan in the regression, that was one of the things we were looking for, were any kind of birthmarks on the body, and that's based on the work of the late Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was here at the University of Virginia. Dr. Stevenson was renowned for his work with past lives in children, and he had done a paper on birthmarks as being remnants of a wound from a previous lifetime. So I've had people who have had birthmarks on their sides and their shoulder, other parts of their body. When we do the regression, we find out that they, in fact, had been wounded there, either a gunshot wound or a stabbing, or a spear had gone in that area. So those are just clues to a past life trauma of some sort.
What about moles? Is it the same thing, or?
I'm not sure if moles are the same thing, to be honest with you. I haven't really, a lot of the people that have come to me, this is the area that very few people even talked about. You know, they didn't really get into, and I think they were questioning whether a mole was a birthmark or not.
I see.
It could very well be. I haven't studied that aspect of it enough to verify that.
Well, I will say this. I've had many past lives where I've had some really gnarly ways of exiting the physical plane, and one of them was definitely gunshot wounds, so that makes sense. One other thing I wanted to talk about is this whole process that you had. You start with the body scan, and so for people who haven't read the book yet, is it that you're walking the client through the body scan? Are you intuitively doing the body scan? How does that work?
Well, that's part of the relaxation process of the regression itself. Normally when I do a regression, I just simply relax. I'll give them the instruction to relax their body one part at a time. We start at their feet and work our way up. In this particular research project, I added that as they were relaxing that part of their body, to scan that part of their body themselves to see if they had any discomfort, meaning any kind of physical achiness at that moment, if they had any sensitivity in that part of their body, or if they had the birthmarks. The sensitivity part comes in, for instance, if people feel a sensitivity around their neck. They're the kind of people that don't ever wear scarves. They can't stand to have anything around their neck. Well, they could have had a past life in which they had some sort of throat trauma. They could have been hanged, or something may have happened to them, to their throat. Same thing with people with some people don't like to have anything coming at their eyes. So all of those were clues. The body scan was meant to be a clue, because oftentimes your body is reacting. It's knowing that you're going to into this altered state in which you're going to look at a prior a body that you had in another lifetime, and it often. It's interesting that it sort of sets it up. I had one man who was shot in the thigh, and as we were doing the body scan, before we even got to the regression part, he was complaining about pain in that same area. So I found that somewhat interesting to see if they were getting any kind of discomfort or sensitivities or birthmarks in different parts of their body, and then to compare that with the regression to see if they in fact had any trauma to that part of their body in their past life.
Wow. I think that was a great addition to your process because of the information it brought forth. It really, it got to me when I read it. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense as to why I have this birthmark, these two birthmarks that I never, I tried to ignore them because they're really big and gnarly, but I know that there's a specific past life associated with being shot in the back as well as the legs, so it makes perfect sense. your first two books were all about soul writing. The first one was called Soul Writing, Conversing with Your Higher Self, which I think I would also highly recommend people get. And also Your Soul Remembers, Accessing Your Past Lives Through Soul Writing. So can you talk a little bit about what soul writing is, how you came across it, and how you came to integrate this or combine this with your past life regression sessions?
Oh, sure. Well, the easiest understandable definition of soul writing is that it is a written form of meditation. So, you know, people say prayer is you talking to God, meditation is God talking to you, soul writing is you taking notes. So it's the same way that when you do a meditation, it's the same process. The only difference is that in a meditation you may be getting visions or messages somehow in your head, in your mind, whereas with soul writing, that information is coming from above, through you, through your soul, out your hand and onto the paper, so that you can revisit it over and over again. You can actually carry on a dialogue with your higher self. You could carry on a dialogue with Source, your source with God, with an angel, with a guide, whatever you believe in, whatever you're comfortable with. And you can actually have a conversation with your past life aspect. So it's going into an altered state of consciousness. It is, and I have at the back of my book, I have all the how to do it, so that if anybody's interested in trying this, they can. Basically, it's just going into a very relaxed, meditative state, breathing deeply, surrounding yourself with white light, saying a prayer of protection. I never do this work without doing both of those steps, by the way. And then putting the pen down and then asking a question. I like to think of soul writing as almost like a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phone home card to Source, because you can use it to get guidance from a higher plane, from the higher consciousness, the collective consciousness. You can get advice and guidance anytime you ask. And I loved what you said earlier in the first segment when you were talking about, there's help out there for you, but you have to ask for it. Well, this is asking for it in written form. And it's not automatic writing. I do want to stress that. There's a difference between the two, and that's also in my book. And people know of that term, automatic writing, but there's some dangers to it, and I just want people to be aware of that. I came to it because Edgar Cayce talked a lot about it. He called it inspirational writing in his day, but he was doing readings in the 20s and 30s and 40s when it meant something completely different than it means today. Today, inspirational writing is thought of more in the Christian genre, and automatic writing is considered in the occult. So I wanted to come up with a term that more accurately described the process, and that's what I got. In terms of applying it to past lives, I noticed that I was getting information about my own past lives using that method. And Frank DeMarco did a book called Chasing Smallwood, in which he had an entire conversation in writing with his past life aspects. So I thought, well, this is really interesting. We can apply it to past life work, which is what the second book was about. The first book, Soul Writing, was actually my thesis, and that's all about the different ways you can apply soul writing to all aspects of your life. The second book was really zeroing in on using it for past life work, and now I used it for the physical karma book to enable people to, at the end of the regression, I put a pen in their hand and a paper on their lap, and I said, now ask your soul if there's any additional information it can give you that you did not get in the regression. And you would be surprised. That is where many of the aha moments came from, because the soul writing gave them the backstory, or it answered a question that they didn't get answered sufficiently in the course of the regression. Very, very powerful tool, and I encouraged everyone to continue to use it long after the regression was over and just apply it to every aspect of their life.
You know, one of the other things that you wrote about in your book that you did at the end of each session is you asked every participant if there was anyone in this life who reminded them of someone that they knew or encountered in their past life regression. What did you learn from asking that question, and how did that help the individual?
Well, we travel as a soul family or in pods, so to speak, so that the same people, the same souls reincarnate with you over and over again. Now, they all change. We all change our positions within that unit. Sometimes we're male, sometimes we're female. Your father in this life could have been your sister in another life. And so we come back with each other. We're part of that pre-life agreement to come in together to assist each other in whatever lesson we've decided to tackle in that particular lifetime. So when they're able to see, and many times, because they don't look the same, so I say just feel them out, feel the essence of their being, of who they were to you in a previous life, and tell me if they're in this life now. And in every single case, they were able to identify at least one person who was with them now. And then we would talk about, well, what role are they playing in your life now, as opposed to the role that they played before. And that enabled them to be very much more forgiving of these people, understanding that they came in love to assist them, even if the lesson was painful. It was still done out of love for them on a karmic, on a soul level, rather. And so that was very healing, and it made sense to them then why the relationship with this person was the way it was when they addressed it from a karmic perspective.
That makes sense. That really does make sense. So there is another question I have to ask you about another process that you included, or another question that you asked, I should say, and that is that you would take people to the time of their death during the past life regression so that they could explain how they died. And was that more significant than the actual experience of the life? I'm asking this because when I've had my own past life regressions, when I've been regressed, it tends to be right around the moment of my death. And versus just this life that I was living with someone. Is that pretty typical that that's what shows up, because that's where most of the karmic beliefs could be locked in, is during something traumatic like death?
Well, when I take people to the death scene, I have them looking at it rather objectively so that they're not re-experiencing it. They're just looking at it as if it were a movie.
When we return after the break, Joanne, we'll continue that. I'll let you finish answering that question. I'm sorry. We'll be back in just a few moments, everyone. Please stay tuned.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
I want to thank my mommy for loving me so much,
for taking me to the doctor when I broke my foot,
for leaving me alone when I wanted to be alone.
And now, as a grown-up, I'm thankful for being able to take care of you, my dear mom, for taking you to your therapies, for understanding that sometimes you simply want to be alone.
Roles change without us noticing. That's why AARP gives you the information to provide even better care for your loved one. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
We're back, everyone, with Joanne DiMaggio talking about her brand new book, just came out in September, karma can be a real pain, past life clues to current life maladies. And so before we went into that break, I had asked you a question, and I didn't give you enough time to answer before the break music started. So Joanne, can you kind of elucidate on that in terms of the time of the death and what happened during the death when you're doing a past life regression, and why that information has value?
I asked them at the moment of death, as their soul is leaving their body, what were their last thoughts? Because often those last thoughts will set up the next lifetime. I had one woman who came to me who had a very bad case of psoriasis, head to toe. She was just covered with it, and she went back to a life in which she was a prostitute in the Old West. And when I asked her what were her last thoughts as her soul left her body, she said, "I don't want to be touched." And in this life, she manifests a skin condition in which nobody wants to touch her. So those last thoughts are very, very powerful. And I do ask people, do you have any resentments? Do you have any unfinished business? And often we see those playing themselves out then in the next lifetime. So everyone, be careful what you're thinking when you leave this planet.
Be careful what you're thinking, period.
Right, yeah.
But definitely when you leave.
Right.
So, I am so grateful that you've done this research and you've presented it in a very thoughtful manner so that anyone can read it, no matter what their background is, and it's relatable. But what do you think is the biggest obstacle that holds back more of exploration into who we are as a soul? Like you said, we've been around since the very beginning, and we've just kind of trading out different cars and experiences. And so what is the biggest obstacle that holds back past life regression from becoming more mainstream and more acceptable in the world?
Well, unfortunately, only 24% of the American public even believes in reincarnation. A lot of that really is rooted in their religious beliefs. Reincarnation actually was in the Bible until the 5th century, when the Council of Nicaea took out any reference to it in the Bible. So the Bible we're reading today, in my opinion, is not, obviously not the original Bible, not the original version. But when you think about it, if everyone thought that they had more than one chance in life, that's a control issue. So so the churches have, the religions have, indicated one life, and if you screw up, you go to hell. You have eternal damnation. That isn't the way it is with reincarnation. Luckily, there are 1.4 billion people in the world, primarily in the East, who do believe in reincarnation. So that's a great obstacle. The other obstacle is that people think that they're going to make something up, that it's not real, and that they're going to be just going off on a tangent and telling a story. Although I have to tell you that although many people who came to my study had that idea in the beginning, they certainly did not have that idea when they left. They knew that it was something that was very, very real. They could smell things. They could feel things. They would burst into tears. They had real intense emotion involved with the lifetimes that they saw. So they knew that was real. They weren't making that up. So those are two probably the big basic ones, just believing that that it's real, and then concern about whether this is something that is against their religious beliefs.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right on that. So, Joanne, can you tell everyone where they can find your new book as well as your earlier books that you, because I think that soul writing, conversing with your higher self, is something that I haven't read it yet, but it's one I want to get because I think it's something that probably has a great deal of value in terms of helping people to connect with their higher self, with their spiritual team, and also your soul remembers. Is everything on Amazon.com or?
Absolutely. You can get it through Amazon. You're welcome to come to my website, which is JoanneDiMaggio.com. That's JoanneDiMaggio.com. And on that website, you'll see my upcoming appearances. I'm happy to do workshops. If people want to invite me to their neck of the woods, I'm happy to come out and share this information in a workshop, and also to do some regression work if they'd like. I do see clients here in Charlottesville. I don't do this over the phone, and with your training too, you probably know why, because people, I need to be physically present, so in case I'm watching the energies in the body, and in case they get into any kind of trouble, I need to actually physically be there. But so I don't do it by Skype, and I don't do it over the phone. I only do it in person. So all of that information, there's information on soul writing as well, is on that website. And I welcome people to visit the website, to email me. I do answer my emails, and Joanne at JoanneDiMaggio.com. So I hope that people will explore this a little further. And there are past life therapists all over the country, very reputable people that they can find to assist them on their journey.
And I think reputable is very important to emphasize, because when you're dealing with a past life, there tends to be some traumatic energy around that, whether it's very big or just, enough where it's emotional. And you really want to work with someone who knows what they're doing. Like Joanne said, that's why she doesn't do it over the phone, is because you need to be present. In some ways, it's shamanic work to me. When I was doing it, I don't do it anymore, but when I was doing it, it felt very much like stepping into their sacred space and really being able to walk that journey with them as I asked questions and they answered. I mean, do you feel the same about that?
Well, I consider it sacred work. It's definitely not something. It's not a parlor trick or game. It's not something. No. If people call me and I say, why do you want a regression? And they say, I'm just curious. I just think it would be fun. I don't work with them. This is really serious work. It should be done by someone who has the training to do it, and as well as someone who has worked on their own past lives. Because, it's one thing to have the technical training of how to do it, but it's another thing to have gone through it yourself, to know all the nuances of it, and to be able to assist people with whatever presents itself. And we never know when they come in what they're going to be dealing with. So that's important to me.
That is so. You're right. You never know what. And if you read the stories in her book, Karma Can Be a Real Pain, these stories are fascinating because some of them are very, very old past lives, like 800 BC. I mean, and they're fascinating. So I definitely encourage you to, if you have any interest in past lives, to get her book and read it first, and maybe step into her other book, Soul Writing, Conversing Your Higher Self and Your Soul Remembers. But finding somebody who's reputable is key. And I can't believe that we're almost out of time here. This time has gone so fast. It's been so much fun. So I would, if we do have a few minutes left, what were do you have one of your most compelling findings from your research project? What were you really left with as a whole after doing 50 of these? Did you come away knowing something different than you did when you entered into it?
No, it was fascinating and awesome to me, and I was very humbled by it, especially when people who are sometimes in their late 60s, early 70s were undergoing this, and their lives changed. And later on, they came to me and thanked me profusely for having worked with them. One woman in particular who was having night terrors over and over again, and that all stopped after the one session with me, and her husband was so grateful. He took me by the hand when I had my book launch at Unity a couple of weeks ago, and he was so sincere. He had tears in his eyes, and he said, thank you. And you know what? That so humbles me, and on the days when I think, why am I doing this again? then I remember situations like that, and it just keeps me going.
Yeah, there's nothing better than that kind of reward, to see someone's life so significantly change, especially somebody in their 60s or their 70s. That's amazing relief that they've had to struggle with probably for all of their life until they met you.
Yeah, that's
wow.
Very, very heartwarming. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, Joanne DiMaggio, thank you so much for joining us here today. I know we're going to be signing off in just a moment. You are an absolute delight, and your work is so needed in the world today, and I'm so glad that consciousness is shifting and changing, and where even though most of those people in Asia recognize reincarnation and we just have a small 24% here in the United States, I think that is even changing, and I hope that this show is a seed that helps to be a catalyst for that change to happen, because there's a lot of value in trying to understand who and what we really are, and knowing that we're far more than this physical body and form.
Exactly. Let's hope that that consciousness shift happens soon.
Yeah, I think it has to. We're looking at some pretty gnarly stuff right now coming down the pike.
True. Yeah. You wonder what the karma is of our political candidates too. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Or even the United States, I mean, there's a collective consciousness that humanity as a whole even has.
Right,
that we're kind of
karma too. Right, exactly.
Absolutely, countries have karma. Humanity has karma. It's quite an interesting time that we're living in. It's a time that we need to reach for healing any way that we can get it, because as we heal ourselves on an individual level, we're healing the whole.
Exactly.
It's not
we're
just
all connected.
Because we're all connected. We are all one. We all came from the same place, and we all return to the same place. And hopefully I won't have to stay on the remedial school bus for too much longer with schoolroom. Schoolroom. Oh, gosh. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Joanne.
Thank you, Sylvia. I've enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll be back again next week. And until then, have next and guidance. And I love you here. Bye-bye.